Here it is, ladies and gentlemen, the Western Wall, and it's called the Kotel in Hebrew. Christians refer to it as the Wailing Wall. And of course, this is one of the most sacred sites in Judaism. The Wailing Wall, or Western Wall, is the western retainer that surrounded the temple during the first temple period. If you notice, the first 11 layers of that wall from the ground up is Herodian. Now, when we say Herodian, we're talking about going back to the 1st century AD during the time of Herod. As you can see, my keeper came off. Of course, you gotta have your keeper on when you're here in the sacred enclosure. So the Western Wall was not a part of the temple itself during the Second Temple period. It was the retaining wall during the Second Temple period. And we know that this wall was in existence 2,000 years ago. We know that when General Titus and the 10th Roman Legion came in at around 70 AD, they destroyed the temple, they destroyed the city of Jerusalem, but for some reason, they left that wall intact. And so this wall has been standing for nearly 2,000 years. And this is the reason why Jews and Christians and people from all over the world would come to this sacred enclosure to pray at the Western Wall. The Western Wall, there it goes again, I just caught that one. The Western Wall continues to go all the way down below to the street level of the 1st century AD. And so you will notice that within the cracks of those walls, and if we can see if we can maybe get in there a little bit, you notice that in the very cracks of those walls right there, people from all over the world write prayer requests in those walls. And they will stuff those prayer requests in the very cracks of that wall. Because according to Judaism, according to the rabbis, Hashem, the God of Israel, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, hears and grants the prayer requests of those papers that are stuffed into that very wall. The Wailing Wall, and the reason why the Christians call it Wailing Wall is because you will notice here that the Jews come and they wail. What they do is they dav. In other words, they'll go back and forth in that manner, wailing over the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 AD, which, by the way, was prophesied by Yeshua in Matthew chapter 24 and in Luke chapter 19, 41 through 44. He prophesied of the temple's destruction. He said, there shall not be left here one stone upon another that shall not be thrown down. Well, you cannot find one stone from the temple today. Even Israeli archaeologists who are authorities on the Temple Mount will tell you that you cannot find one single stone from the temple, not one single stone at all. The only remnant that we have of the temple, and not even connected to the temple at that, would be this Western Wall, or this Wailing Wall. Jews have been wailing over the destruction of the temple, and they do that during the 9th of Av, which would be August 9th. Every year, annually, on the 9th of Av, A.V., Av would correspond to late July, early August. And they would mourn the destruction of the temple. Of course, they would, I'm just going to keep this off for a minute. They would mourn the destruction of the temple. They would mourn the first temple, Solomon's temple, that was destroyed on the 9th of Av, 586 BC. And they mourn the destruction of the second temple, destroyed by the Romans, on the 9th of Av in 70 AD. So Solomon's temple destroyed by the Babylonians, 586 BC on the 9th of Av. And Herod's temple, and the second temple, destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. And during that time on the 9th of Av, Jews mourn the destruction. the destruction on the 9th of Av, 586 BC and 70 AD, respectively. So they believe also, the rabbis, that this retaining wall was closest to the most holy place, or commonly called the Holy of Holies. But that this was closest to the most holy place when the second temple stood 2,000 years ago. As you continue to look at the Western Wall as it goes all the way down, right below would be called the Tyropian Valley, or the Valley of the Cheesemakers, where there are remains of 2,000-year-old shops where they bought and sold. They would sell sheep, they would sell doves for sacrifice in the temple. If you were poor, you couldn't afford it, you would buy a couple of turtle doves, pigeons for sacrifice. If you could afford it, if you were wealthy back then, you can afford to buy sheep, and then you would pay the half shekel temple tax, and you'd make your way as a Jew up to the Temple Mount. Also over there on that side would be the remains of mikvahs, 2,000-year-old mikvahs. And there would be two sets of stairs. One set on the right would be the unclean steps for the unclean individual to go down. He would immerse himself 7 times. Then he would go around and walk up the clean steps on the left. Now he's purified to walk into the temple complex. You see mikvahs all over Israel here, 2,000 years old. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the wall. We're going to pray at the most sacred piece of real estate on earth today. Ladies and gentlemen, the Temple Mount here in Jerusalem.